is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Sunday in October. Paul Mancano back in Baltimore. Jonas Shaffer in Cincinnati. We are going to recap a wild, insane 41-38 Ravens win over the Cincinnati Bengals. Dissect everything that went right and wrong for the Ravens in this game. But first, the Banner Ravens podcast is brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has been building a legacy of excellence for years, from developing hybrid technology to upping the standards of safety and efficiency. Toyota is always innovating, always making progress. And with a superior lineup of in-stock SUVs, including the adventure-ready RAV4 and capable, affordable Corolla Cross, you can experience the legacy of Toyota for yourself. Visit buyatoyota.com, the official website for deals, to find out more. Toyota, let's go places. Jonas, I picked the word of the day for this one, and the word of the day is a word that you tweeted out at Jonas_Shaffer. It's drunk. The definition, being in a temporary state in which one's physical and mental faculties are impaired by an excess of alcohol. Language of origin, it was Middle English, drunken, first recorded between 1300 and 1350. Old English, drunken, past participle of drinkon. We don't encourage, this is a family podcast, we don't encourage the kind of binge drinking that clearly this game was on. An absolutely wild one. 79 combined points scored, 696 total yards. The highlight reel of this game on YouTube was literally 20 minutes long. Usually NFL posts these clips and they're like between 10 and 13 minutes at most. This was 20 minutes. I don't know if we'll have enough time to get into every insane thing that happened in this game, Jonas.
No, because we gotta hit deadlines. I'm reminded of one tweet in particular from noted philosopher John Boyce, great follow on Twitter, who once opined of playoff hockey. Why watch overtime playoff hockey when you can simply snort cocaine and ride a motorcycle out of a helicopter? Was this not that, Paul? Was this not I feel for the bladders in the respective greater Washington, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Ohio areas, because if you got out of your seat and missed like 5 minutes of this game, you were going to miss one touchdown, maybe two. You were going to miss something incredible, maybe two. This game had freaking everything, Paul.
Yeah. In the second half possession log from halftime on went Bengals touchdown, Ravens touchdown, Bengals touchdown, Ravens touchdown, Bengals touchdown, Ravens touchdown, and finally Bengals interception. Jonas, I mean, the Ravens were several plays away from losing this game, but they won. They moved to 3-2. They moved to above 500. They pushed the Bengals to 1-4. And you never want to count out a team that has Joe Burrow and a team that looked that good offensively. But Ravens, for right now, move a half game behind the Pittsburgh Steelers in the AFC North. Steelers play later on tonight against the Cowboys, and the Bengals are 1-4. I mean, that's an awfully steep hole to climb out of if you are Cincinnati, and that's why this win was so important.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but you were kind of scoreboard watching it at home. You couldn't help but notice that the Commanders were taking care of business against the Browns, right? That game ended up with the Commanders winning 34-13. You have the Tampa Bay Bucks 1 week after that. So this was starting to look like a unexpected spiral, something that could kind of ruin the good vibes that were just overflowing after that win against the Bills. But somehow they, picked themselves up by their bootstraps, just said not today to death, and just kicked the Bengals out the moon door. I mean, that was, we're going to say incredible about 20 times today. So I hope you don't make a drinking game out of this, because even though the theme of this podcast is drunk, we encourage responsible podcast listening habits.
Yeah, we are going to be sober on this episode. Jonas, we got to start with Lamar Jackson, because that was an MVP performance yet again. 26 for 42, 348 passing yards by my count. That's the third most of his career. 4 passing touchdowns, 55 rushing yards. The only real blemish came on what could have been the play that lost the game for the Ravens, which was a fumble in overtime where he temporarily took his eye off the center and lost the ball, and the Bengals recover with a chance to take the lead and the victory by kicking a field goal. They missed that field goal. Other than that, however, other than that fumble, Lamar was incredible. Time and time again, when the team needed him, as just evidenced by the game log that I went through. Every time the Bengals scored, the Ravens answered because Lamar took them down the field efficiently. He took them down the field with ease. He took them down the field quickly. And on a day when Derrick Henry was not getting as much traction on the ground, Lamar was the offense for the Ravens today.
Yeah, this game reminded me in a lot of ways of the Ravens Colts, I think Monday night game from a few years ago, where Colts went ahead early. The Ravens just couldn't stop their running game, and then the Colts secondary starts to lose some guys. Some guys get banged up. Obviously, don't not to diminish anything the Ravens did today, but Bengals losing probably their top cornerback in Dax Hill, Justice's little bro. I think had a big kind of knockdown effect on just what the Ravens were able to get through the air and what Cincinnati could or couldn't do defensively. But that game, the Ravens were able to get barely enough stops. That they finally stiffened up. I think late in the third quarter, early fourth quarter. This one, it was just like, can the Ravens get a single stop in the second half? Can they get a single drive that doesn't last? Can they force a single third down? I mean, golly, to go. What was it? The Zay touchdown, the Isaiah Likely touchdown, immediately followed by the Jamar Chase catch and run score. It was just like, holy shit! Like, is this defense serious? Do they recognize what they are doing here and potentially ruining just this masterpiece from Lamar Jackson? And by God, they went ahead and did it. Obviously, we did not get a chance to talk to Marlon Humphrey post game because he is having his own battles right now with, I guess, media and the NFLPA interviewing rules and regulations. Would have been great to ask him about him possibly being a unexpected hero in this and picking off that pass just right when he needed to. But we couldn't. So we had to talk to other people. But, I thought that the Ravens were going to win after that interception. I thought that they were going to lose after the Justin Tucker field goal to tie the game. I thought they were going to lose after Lamar fumbled it. So many points in this game. I was like, all right, the Ravens lose this game lead that I have written and rewritten 5 times is finally going to stand. And the Ravens said, no, actually, we're going to do something about this.
Yeah, I will get to the defense and everything that went wrong for them on that side of the ball in just a bit. But you do also, while you are quick to point out the fact that the Bengals lost some key defenders in this game, you should also point out that there was more shuffling along the offensive line for the Ravens in this game. Andrew Voorhees, somewhat of a surprising scratch for this game, which means by my eye they went with Patrick McCary at left guard. They had Roger Rosengarten at right tackle, and then at one point Rosengarten left this game in the second quarter with an ankle injury, came back and immediately gave up a safety. So not a great game for him from that standpoint.
I don't know if that was his fault or Lele, but it was definitely someone messed up. Just to leave Patrick Ricard, who is an incredible blocker, but he should there's no circumstance under which a run from the 2-yard line, not even the 1-yard line, should end up with a defensive lineman getting a free run at your fullback / running back as easily as that. That was just. I hope it wasn't Daniel Farley for his sake, because that would just add one more, bad beat to a season of very inconspicuously timed bad beats. But if it was, then, I'm not saying that the Ravens should bench him, but that is not a great look for him after what had been 2 encouraging performances from him.
Yeah, and then Ronnie Stanley, you talked to after the game in the locker room, and he said he was, quote, puking his guts out, and because he got hit in the stomach. What was the deal with that?
Have you ever? I've never puked during my athletic career. I've also not played football during my athletic career, but I played lacrosse, some contact sports. He said that once he got hit, just I guess an incidental leg, knee, elbow, whatever, he just couldn't keep anything down. And to me, that was kind of an unheard of phenomenon. Paul, have you ever talked to anyone or heard of anyone who got punched in the stomach and that just opened the floodgates for all the vomit and bile that might be rolling around in someone's stomach?
My athletic career was brief and unremarkable, so I can't say I have any experience with that. But he ended up missing some plays because of it, correct?
Yeah, but none of the baseballers that you've talked to ever took a 95 mile per hour 95-mile-per-hour fastball to the guts and just started upchucking
Not
everything that they had from that day's lunch?
not that I can think of, but there have been some notable instances this year of pitchers in particular throwing up on the mound. That has been something that has occurred all too often. At least the cameras didn't catch it, which has happened several times in baseball. But none of those, to my knowledge, have been because they have received a blow to the stomach.
Yeah, I mean, so he wasn't on the field for that incredible. I mean, the play we should probably we've done ourselves and our listeners a disservice by not talking
Yeah.
for 10 minutes already about the Lamar to Isaiah Likely catch. I mean, I'm jealous of you, Paul, because you were able to watch that in real time. You were able to experience Ravens Twitter as all the notifications pop off. You got to hear the Kevin Harlan call of that play. You know, we were just there, you know, not complaining about our view, but we only got to see that play once, you know, multiple times if we wanted to check it out on Twitter. What was it like to see that, and then everything that sprung from that mushroom cloud of just pure football incredibleness?
I mean, you got to see it with your own eyes, so you have that advantage. But yeah, I believe.
But even then, like I was sure that he was going to throw that away. Like the way
Yeah.
that he was kind of scrambling, I was like, "There's no way he's going to throw this across his body."
And the way, and then the ball's hovering in the air, and you think surely this is going to be picked off, and this is going to be the game-breaking play. Kevin Harlan, I believe, used the term "thrown down like a rag doll" to describe how Lamar Jackson stiff-armed Sam Hubbard twice. He fumbled the snap. Remember that. He fumbled the snap, then picked it up with his, I believe, his left hand, rolls over to his right, stiff arms Sam Hubbard, comes basically within 3 inches of the sideline, throws across his body into the end zone to Isaiah Likely, who is going the opposite direction. Lamar is going left to right, and Isaiah Likely is going right to left. And an incredible, if he wins back-to-back MVPs, that'll be the play that they run on highlight reels, because that was an insane, unbelievable play, and it was indicative of the kind of throws that he was making today.
Yeah, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, but that second half, that third quarter was just Lamar going supernova in a way that I can't really recall. I think that the second half of that Colts game was definitely one. You think about Lamar doing what he had to, putting the team on his back in the second half / overtime. I guess not overtime of that win over the Rams last year. That was, you know, MVP worthy Lamar. You know, Zay Flowers, who obviously popped off today in a way that you accurately predicted, I will say, and that the Ravens really needed. You know, said that was third MVP level stuff from Lamar. And yeah, I mean, I am like religiously opposed to anyone talking about MVP considerations here on October 6th, but Lamar has to be not, if not the front runner, a front runner after what he did today, with, you know, the running game not being there, having to, you know, carry this offense on his back because the defense couldn't do jack shit. It was just, you know, my only regret for Lamar was that he wasn't more happy about this game. He was still beating himself up post game about you know, him dropping the ball literally on that overtime possession. You know, he said this game wasn't that exciting because he felt so bad about how that overtime possession had gone for him.
That's wild. I mean, Lamar is you know, he doesn't often discuss these big time matchups like that, but that's wild, because I'm glad you brought up the wide receivers too, because they were awesome today. That's partly how Lamar was able to throw for the third most passing yards in a game in his career. They really, it started with Zay Flowers. I mean, 7 catches, 111 yards. Rashad Bateman had 4 catches for 58 yards, which you continue to blow the horn of Rashad Bateman, and he has continued to deserve it. I mean, outstanding play from the wide receivers in a game where they were clearly not the most talented wide receivers on the field. You know, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins were out there making spectacular plays, and it just felt like pitch and catch between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins way too many times on way too many drives. But you should give credit. We should give credit to the Ravens wide receivers. And how about Charlie Kolar having 3 catches for 64 yards and almost putting Mark Andrews in the dust yet again. Mark Andrews did finish with 4 for 55, but another surprising development through 5 weeks of the season has been the emergence of the former 4th-round pick in Charlie Kolar.
Yeah, you know, talking to some people around the team, but before the season, during the preseason, and really high praise for George Godsey, the Ravens tight ends coach. And I don't know if there's been, a more impressive, just all around developer of and like fitter, chess piece maker on this coaching staff so far than Godsey. I mean, for Isaiah Likely to pop off the way he has, from Mark Andrews to develop into a blocker the way he has, Charlie Kohler again accepting that he's going to have to play football in a very different way than he did at Iowa State, where he was, basically the slot receiver. Pat Ricard again, finding a role, although not so much in a game like this, but being a guy who is, stepped in and automatically basically become Derrick Henry's best friend. Just a really, huge pat on the back to George Godsey and that whole tight ends group. Incredible quote post game from Charlie Kohler, who is just a great interview and a great guy all around. I asked him, did this game feel like a Big 12 shootout? Because obviously he played on a defense averse Iowa State team back in college, and he said he was joking about how, it was great at Iowa State because every game was either a blowout where we win by 35 points, or we'd be favored by 35 points and not cover the spread. Not that I gamble or anything. So putting his foot in his mouth right away. But, was joking about how all the defensive attention being paid to Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews meant that the Bengals forgot to defend the big, slow white tight end on the Ravens roster. And, it was that big Lamar strike downfield, down the middle of the seam, or down the seam to Charlie, that I think really got that second half offense in gear, because that told me that they were for real, that they weren't going to try to ground and pound their way into a comeback. They were going to go full steam ahead, even if that full steam ahead meant that slow poke Charlie Kohler would be the one, having to get them there.
Yeah, and the struggles you mentioned on the ground, I mean, I think part of it could just be due to the way the game was going. The fact that the Ravens realized they were in that shootout, they had to score quickly. They were often down by 2 scores late in this game because of the defensive failures, which again we'll get to. But Derrick Henry, 14 carries for 40 yards. And then his final carry in overtime, 1 carry for 51 yards. So we're talking about going from 2.9 yards per carry to 6.1. And it's all because Evan McPherson missed a kick for Cincinnati in overtime that opened the door for that. Let's touch on the defense because it was all bad on that side of the ball. It was Joe Burrow just having his way with this secondary. 30 for 39, 392 yards, 5 touchdowns. The only really great play they made all day was the Marlon Humphrey interception, which allowed them to come back and tie the game late and then go into overtime and win. But this defense was allowing a ridiculous number of explosive plays coming into this game. They led the league in explosive pass plays allowed, which is a play of 20 or more yards. They had 20 through the first 4 weeks of the season, and the Bengals made sure that they stayed near the top of the list. You start with the second quarter 41-yard touchdown to Jamar Chase, who was sprinting wide open at the very end of the half, a time when the Bengals needed to pick up chunk yardage. The Ravens really just had to keep them from getting inside Ravens territory, had to keep them in front of them, like playing prevent defense, and they do exactly what they can't do and allow a Jamar Chase 41-yard bomb to put the Bengals ahead right before halftime.
Just bad defense all around. I think it was a little bit foolish to think that the Ravens shutting down Buffalo and Josh Allen and that, competent but not exceptionally athletic Bills receiving core, marked a turning point. Not that Dallas with CeeDee Lamb is really anything that special, but it's just, you hit the head you hit the nail right on the head, Paul. Just explosives. Last year, just looking at True Media defines an explosive pass play as any catch, 16 yards or more. They gave up 70 total last year, 70 explosive plays through 5 games. They lead the league right now with 37. So that's on pace to be over 110, over 120. It's just, they're getting beat every which way. I thought that you could at least count on this defense to tackle well in space, but then there goes Jamar Chase, somehow not getting tackled by Malik Harrison, who you would think would be, well accustomed or well suited to make that kind of play, even though he's not the most fleet of foot. Just get off a block and make a play. You saw Nate Wiggins getting burned not by Jamar Chase, not by T Higgins, but by Andre Yoshivas. I mean, and getting like 5 yards of separation on whatever I didn't really see the route. I'm not sure if it was a double move or whatever, but Marcus Williams not taking right angles, not being good situationally. It just, there's so much money, so much time, so much draft capital invested in the secondary, and for the only things to have happened since the end of last year is losing Geno Stone, losing Mike McDonald, losing what's his face, the Denard Wilson to Tennessee, and to have this startling of a regression, it's baffling to me. And it would have nice to talk to Marlon as kind of one of the emotional leaders of that team and get a sense for what's happening. Didn't see Marcus Williams in there post game, shocker, but something needs to turn around because Jane Daniels is tearing shit up right now, and they need to figure out a solution before they have to find themselves another shootout to win.
Yeah, I mean, they did lose Ronald Darby to the Jaguars. They did lose Arthur Millette, who's they brought back, but he's hurt. But that shouldn't explain. They added a first-round cornerback and Nate Wiggins. It shouldn't explain that kind of regression. And you hope that Zach Orr, in the way that Mike McDonald was able to do in his first year as defensive coordinator in 2022, is able to make mid-season adjustments. Mike McDonald had the benefit of adding Roquan Smith midway through the season via the trade deadline. I don't know how you add to this defense that already, like you said, has so many resources poured into it, and they've been, for the most part, aside from Arthur Millette, pretty healthy through the first 5 weeks of the season. It's doesn't appear to be a personnel issue. It's not like they don't have the talent there. They, for whatever reason, are allowing these massive plays. You mentioned the Andre Yoshivas one, the surprising one, the screen pass, which that is a combination of secondary and linebackers because Malik Harrison, Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, and Marcus Williams looked like they all had a shot at him. That pass was thrown, a yard down the field, maybe at the line of scrimmage to the boundary, and he ends up taking it 70 yards. Marcus Williams has drawn a ton of ire from fans on Twitter for how he has started this season. He was playing through a torn pec last year, even though he'll never admit it. This year, though, you tweeted he has arguably been worse through the first 5 weeks of the season. What is going on with the guy that they paid to be a star from the Saints?
I don't know. I mean, they've been using him in new positions, or they've been changing up his role a little bit, not having him be the free safety, the center fielder, if you will, as often. But he was the center fielder on that late touchdown, the 45-yarder right before halftime. He, I think, was the center fielder on that screen catch and run score. So I don't know what the deal is. Sure would be nice to talk to him, but he's made his objections to the media or his displeasure with the media abundantly clear. And then I think obviously it would be dishonest of us if we didn't just tip our cap to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T Higgins, who make coverage very, very difficult. They turn those 50-50 balls into 70-30 balls or 80-20 balls because if you threaten vertically every play, which is the goal of every receiver, no matter what route they're running, then you have to respect their deep speed. But then that opens up those back shoulder throws. And how many times did Joe Burrow just stick it on a guy's helmet, throwing those 12 to 18-yard comebacks just time and time again? I mean, obviously he did a great job with the downfield shots. He did great, getting the ball out on time against pressures and stuff like that. But there are only so many things you can do when you are trying to battle a guy who's as athletic as Jamar Chase or as big as T Higgins. And I don't know. It's something that they've got to fix. I'm optimistic that they will, because we've seen just how good this secondary can be. But it's I don't know. I'm as out of words for their performance as I am for the ending this game, because you look at just the 5 worst performances for any pass defense this year. Buccaneers giving up 509, to Kirk Cousins. The Lions giving up 395 to Geno Smith. The Ravens giving up 392 to Joe Burrow. The Vikings giving up 389 to Jordan Love. And the Ravens giving up 379 to Dak Prescott. It would have been unimaginable to me that you would have told me before the season, through 5 weeks, the Ravens are going to have 2 of the worst 5 defensive passing game performances of the entire NFL. It just doesn't compute.
No, and you really hope they get it figured out before next week, because Jaden Daniels and the 4-1 Washington Commanders are up next. Let's talk about special teams, because we saw some great and we saw some pretty bad. The great was Justin Tucker. He's back, baby. Nailing a 56-yarder that played the wind perfectly. It looked like it was starting out wide left, and then the wind took it over and it hooked right down the middle. That was the kind of confidence-inspiring kick that Ravens fans were waiting for, and it came at a clutch time. It was beautiful. You loved to see him come back. And then you saw some bad from the rest of the special teams. Tylan Wallace let a punt go over his head at one point that ended up being downed inside the 5-yard line. A kickoff was taken by Isaiah Collier that he touched it and it bounded out of bounds at the 8-yard line. And if he had just let that ball and it go out of bounds, they would have taken it much farther upfield. Not great all around, but you did have the at least beautiful moment of Justin Tucker reminding everybody why he's the GOAT.
Yeah. If you lost faith in this man who has given Baltimore and Ravens fans such joy and such pleasure in such critical moments, I understand it a little bit, because we can all be prisoners of the moment. I think on this very podcast, Paul, we have talked about just how the misses from Tuck have not just been disappointing, considering the scope of his career, but ill-timed. You think about some of those misses ultimately coming back to bite the Ravens in the ass. But I mean, I wish we'd had more time today at Harbaugh's presser to ask him if, and he would have obviously we would have needed a lie detector test for this, but to ask him if there was any consideration whatsoever on, 4th and 5 for them to send the offense back out there rather than have Tucker take the 55-yarder, because they have, in the past, I think, taken the more aggressive option when it's like from 58 or 60, and fans have gotten all up in arms because we have this incredible kicker. Why not send him out there for this very long kick, because he's made it in the past. But what a vote of confidence from Harbs in Tucker. Talked to Charlie Kohler, who's obviously there on the field goal protection unit, and he said he heard just by the sweet sound that Justin Tucker makes when he hits that sweet spot, that he knew it as soon as that ball was contacted by Tuck, that he knew it was in, and he felt like it would have been good from 70. So, obviously Tuck was a very popular man in that locker room. A lot of very happy Ravens, happy for him. And it feels like all is well, because if he'd missed that, we would have had the defense to blame. We would have had Lamar to blame. I guess that we wouldn't have had Lamar to blame if it hadn't got to overtime. We would have had Tuck to blame. We would have had the coaching to blame, because there was that questionable, late second quarter stretch where Harbaugh maybe got a little bit over aggressive, first with the Charlie Kohler tush push. Then there was also the timeout in that mix, and gives Cincy the ball back with like 35 seconds left and a couple timeouts, and it comes back to bite them. So a win can wash out a loss. A win can wash out a lot, and I think the vibes, the aura around this team is diametrically opposed to what it would have been had this team lost it.
Yeah, that was a curious timeout call by John Harbaugh, because he took it with 49 seconds left and they were facing 3rd and 10 from their own 25-yard line. And it ended up resulting in an incomplete pass on 3rd and 10. And then they punted away, and then Bengals get the ball, and that's how they were able to score that massive touchdown to Jamar Chase right before halftime. Chris Collier, I said Isaiah Collier, who was a first-round pick by the Utah Jazz. Chris Collier was the one who let that ball go out of bounds. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games where you're going to look back at the end of the year and say that was a massive game for where you stood this season. And if the Ravens are hoping to get back to the AFC Championship game, having the 1 seed would help quite a lot. They obviously have a long ways to go before then, but this coin flip of a game going their way is one of those things that seemed like it happened time and time again last year. I think of the Rams game where they win in overtime. Getting wins like these are massively, massively important. And it was nice for Ravens fans, I think, on this Sunday to be the team that was coming back from a fourth quarter 10-point deficit, not the team that was blowing the fourth quarter deficit.
Yeah. And if you want to laugh, just go to the ESPN.com gamecast for this game, scroll down a little bit and just look at the win probability chart, because it is like a bizarro EKG. You've got the Ravens in the, with heavily favored all throughout that first half. Then it switches like this on a coin flip, the flip of a coin to the Bengals. You've got them being heavily favored all through the second half, as much as 91% win expectancy. I guess maybe right after the Bengals took the lead took the 10-point lead with about 8.5 minutes left. Then you've got the Ravens favored right after they moved into Bengals territory on the drive after the Marlon Humphrey interception. Then you've got the Bengals being favored, right after the Ravens had to force the punt. You've got the bouncing back and forth in overtime. I mean, it's I'm so glad this game was at 1 o'clock, Paul, and not at prime time, because it would have been, this game would have got like 40 million viewers if this game was at prime time. And I think all of America deserves to watch this. So shout out to the NFL for making this a 20-minute highlight YouTube video. But this was, I mean, how do you wrap your arms around this besides just saying Lamar good, Burrow good, defense bad?
I mean,
good, football good, life good.
Football good, yeah. At one point, Kevin Harlan in the fourth quarter was calling it the NFL's best game of the year through 5 weeks. And at that point, it just felt like the Ravens were constantly trying to punch back. And from a Baltimore perspective, it was like, well, this is an excruciating watch. So I don't know what you're talking about saying it's most entertaining. But from a third-party, non-biased viewpoint, it was incredibly entertaining. Two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL duking it out for a critical division game. And it was incredibly thrilling at the end. And it helps that you have the taste of victory to let it all taste a little bit better. But Jonas, I hope you can taste some beer and maybe be our word of the day by the end of today, because you deserve to relax after that game. But I know you have deadlines to hit in Cincinnati.
And an early morning wake-up call. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got to fly back and listen to John Harbaugh tomorrow. And we will have another podcast for you later on in the week as we preview the Ravens matchup against the red-hot Washington Commanders. At Jonas_Shaffer is his Twitter handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Please subscribe to the Baltimore Banner, where you can read Jonas and Gianna Hahn and Kyle Goon and much, much more. And, of course, give us a thumbs up. Write us a good review on Apple Podcasts of the Banner Ravens podcast. That'd be very